Western influencers pretending to be poor in buying expensive cars, just so you know. Gain views from the mainstream media. The hot and beautiful Ivana. Well, not this picture. But this. Dressing up with brags in order to have some content. Igorot who just graduated, which made a fuss in social media. What do these three have in common? You are absolutely right. Well, have fun there. Entertainment and poverty. I, Brandon B. Filisarta, together with my groupmate Brian Estrella, are here to present to you all about the poverty of television. The mutation of suffering in classified Philippines. Jonathan Corpus Ong research makes an original and important contribution to the field of media ethics and the mediation of suffering. Ong applies ethnographic tools to these fields, the analysis of which has been mostly on normative positions and textual analysis. He argues that the study of media ethics in relation to the mediation of suffering must incorporate the audience research, rather than imposing the researcher's position on the morality of various forms of mediating suffering. Ong argues that the study of the field must take on board what he calls lay moralities, which is the judgment of right or wrong that people make in relation to the media. The audience's position in relation to the televisual representations of suffering are diverse and sometimes in opposition to common perceptions of media ethics and the mediation of suffering. Thus, Ong calls for a more reflexive approach which will hopefully nuance our ethical understanding of mediated engagement with suffering. Hence, we should ask ourselves, is it right to describe less opportune people to dress like the middle to higher class elites as Jejemon or Sukara just because of their dress? And how do these audiences in their different contexts respond to televised suffering? I have an analogy for all of you. You gave 1,000 pesos to both rich and poor person. The poor person bought it for food, while the rich person invested it for some kind of small business. Now, which of them is a wise person? Do you think it's the poor guy or the rich one? Well, both of them are. One person invested it for the future, while the other one is just trying to survive for a day. It is a privilege to save some money while others are just trying to make a living. If the poor was born with the same silver spoon in their asses, they will just do the same as the rich one, if not better. The book begins with a thorough and well-constructed mapping of the moral turn in media scholarship. Chapter 1 explores the debate between different strands of media ethics and situates the study at hand as relevant to all of these strands. This theorizes the educational and moral role of the media in facilitating fair, responsible, and just society in light of distant suffering. Ong makes a compelling proposal to advance this scholarship and introduces lay moralities to this field. In his view, normative ideals about the mediation of suffering need to be contrasted with and validated according to what laypersons make of such mediated representations. Accordingly, Ong develops an original bottom-up approach to the study of media ethics. Moreover, so far, the literature on media ethics and the mediation of suffering assumed that the perspective of the Western spectator who watches faraway suffering from the safety of the affluent West. In an original dialogue with the literature on media witnessing, Ong contends that in the context of his book, the witness and the sufferer converge, since often the people who watch suffering on television and the people who appear on screen experience similar distress. For instance, how the West views the presidential race of the Marcos family to the current elections. The West see it as an abusive approach of power, which they reminded in their article about the billions of pesos they stole from the country, while the mainstream media in our nation tends to undermine this statement and see this as an attack. Most people, or ignorant people in the social media, tend to neglect this information about the atrocities the Marcos family made in the past decades. However, the people who suffered under the regime and people who did their research have a strong conviction that this man is incompetent and a thief and a plunderer. Hence, this proves the fact that the objective dialogue and approach of witnesses and sufferer are present in media ethics and converges with one another. However, people with an ignorant nature tend to neglect this information because of their perspective. Chapter 2 integrates the mediation theory and the media ethics. This chapter also maps media ethics debates along what Ong calls the key moments of the mediation process. The mediation theory of technological mediation offers a framework to analyze the roles technologies play in human existence and in society. Its central idea is that technologies, when they are used, help to shape the relations between human beings and the world, rather than approaching technologies as material objects opposed to human subjects, or as mere extensions of human beings. It is seen them as mediators of human-world relations or connections. His argument here is that so far the studies have focused mostly on one moment with the text, while speculating about the audience ethics and ecological ethics. Ong's study takes different approach, focusing on both production and audiences. The chapter then introduces the Philippines media landscape, which is necessary for understanding the study's setting. For instance, how the mainstream media portrays a college graduate ignorant. Comments in some news articles have shown the regards and expressed that hindi hadlang ang kahirapan. But to what the article implies is the opposite. If poverty is not a hindrance, it should then not be published and rejoiced by the society as an entertainment for graduating a certain degree. Hence, some people rejoiced and kept romanticizing about the suffering of other people. Poverty is present, period. Nothing more to be romanticized of. Another example is the finished construction of the Cebu-Cordova Link Expressway. The long-ass project has finally come to fruition as a majestic and beautiful bridge. However, those residents under the highway had opposite progression. They still remained poor and still suffering. Buildings are not the only sign of progress, but the people living in it. They say that the media pictures 1,000 words, but which words? And poverty is becoming an entertainment, and the entertainment is the poor. Well, it's becoming like a poverty porn.